Palaeotsunamis can be difficult to trace in the geological record for a number of reasons, but where they are known to have taken place, how they may have affected populations both in the short term and the long term depends on a number of factors. Whether a community lived near the coast, the size of the tsunami, and the impact it had on food resources would all have contributed to the effects of such an inundation. A new study published in the Journal of Quaternary Science uses previously gathered data and statistical modelling to estimate how the Storegga tsunami that occurred in the Norwegian Sea 8,000 years ago affected the Mesolithic population of northern Britain. Information on palaeotsunamis, that is, tsunamis that took place before the historical period, mainly comes from sediment deposits. As well as making this deposition, when a tsunami reaches land, it also erodes and transports sediment. The subsequent backwash and additional waves cause further changes in sediment layers, but as modern-day tsunami analysis has shown, these layers do not remain intact. Later erosion, the action of organisms, and anthropogenic changes to the landscape all can remove or at least partially remove traces of tsunamis. The Holocene Storegga tsunami, which took place at some point between 8,120 and 8,175 years ago, was caused by a submarine landslide which displaced several thousand kilometers of sediment off the coast of Norway. Sediment deposits related to this event have been found in many parts of northern Europe, including North Norway, northern England, western Scotland, the Shetland Islands, Denmark and Greenland. In Britain, the deposits show up as a sandy layer amongst peat or mud. In Norway, they are made up of organic material, and in the Shetland Islands, they are made up of peat. Numerical models have been able to estimate the run-up heights of the tsunami at different locations. In the Shetland Islands, it's estimated to have been more than 20 meters in height due to the narrow valleys amplifying it, but to have been much lower in eastern Scotland. However, there's a lot of uncertainty because it's difficult to determine relative sea level and tides for that time period, and both of these would have had a big impact on run-up heights. Between 6,000 and 11,000 years ago, life in Britain was dominated by hunting and gathering. One of the earliest Mesolithic sites is Storegga in Yorkshire, where the remains of dwellings, stone tools, worked animal bones and carved stones have been excavated. One of the most intriguing finds from this site is a decorated pendant, which is probably the oldest known piece of Mesolithic art to have been found in Britain. It's thought that Mesolithic groups may have moved between upland and coastal areas depending on the season, but it's also possible that they focused most of their activity in coastal and estuarine areas due to the large availability of resources. Most of the Mesolithic sites where the remains of dwellings have been identified are on the coast, which certainly lends weight to the idea that these groups were more sedentary and preferred to exploit rich marine resources. At roughly the same time as the Storegga tsunami, the 8.2 Ka event took place, which is the name for a sudden drop in temperature that happened across northwest Europe. The colder climate would also have affected Mesolithic communities, so isolating the impact of the tsunami is not straightforward. Studies on radiocarbon-dated sites have shown a huge population decline in northern Britain after both events took place around 8,200 years ago. A similar decline took place in Norway, but not on mainland Europe, which was distant from the tsunami but still subject to a drop in temperature. However, there are a number of biases that make this modelling of population patterns unreliable. For example, there could be sites that may have been destroyed by the tsunami and sites which are now under the sea. The Mesolithic site of Howick on the coast of Northumberland dates to 9,800 years ago. Archaeologists excavated a pit house there that was occupied for between 100 and 300 years, and they excavated accumulations of hazelnuts which indicate autumn and winter occupation. Although these dates are earlier than the Storegga tsunami, since the area is resource rich and was also inhabited during the later Neolithic, Bronze and Iron Ages, it's possible it was occupied at the time of the tsunami. A sediment core labelled as A taken from Howick shows that a short-lived erosional event occurred 8,100 years ago. During this event, a deposit was made, and at the same time, several thousand years of sediment underneath it were removed. A similar sediment was also found at a site further upstream labelled as Core B. However, these cores are different to other Storegga tsunami deposits found in Britain, so it's possible a storm or a landslide from a riverbank caused them instead. In the recent study, inundation modelling was used to see how Howick and a similar site in Northumberland called Low Hauxley would have been impacted by the tsunami and to determine the likelihood that this sediment deposit came from it. They also carried out mortality modelling to estimate how the Mesolithic populations at Howick and Low Hauxley may have been affected. The tsunami simulation showed that the first wave dissipated before reaching northern England. However, the second wave was much larger and first refracted around the Shetland Islands before travelling south to Howick and afterwards Low Hauxley. 4 subsequent waves then occurred at Howick, caused by oscillations in the North Sea from the primary waves. Relative sea level and high tide models were used to see how the area of inundation would have varied in different scenarios. The area where sediment core A was extracted would only have been inundated in the case of a high tide, but this inundation would not have been powerful enough to deposit the coarse gravel that is found there. Core B would not have been inundated in any of the scenarios modelled. Of course, there's a possibility that run-up height was underestimated by the simulations. The narrow 100-metre wide valley at Howick may have amplified the run-up height of the tsunami. Since the sediment was made up of coarser material than that which is typically found in a tsunami deposit, the researchers think it may have come from a river valley landslide instead. Since such a landslide would have been triggered by a tsunami, the deposit may have been an indirect effect of it. However, since the deposit cannot be dated, it's difficult to be certain. Furthermore, sea level for that time period at that location is difficult to reconstruct. According to the researchers, it's located in a region on the hinge of isostatic uplift, which means they don't know if the sea level has risen or fallen there since the mid-Holocene. If there had been a high tide at the time of the tsunami, that would also have amplified its run-up height, but it's not possible to know if that happened or not. During the Mesolithic, intertidal zones were important areas for obtaining marine resources, such as fish and shellfish. Excavations in Scotland have found many shell middens dating to that time in such areas. According to modelling at Howick and Low Hauxley, the tsunami may have caused a high mortality rate, largely due to the sudden nature of such natural disasters. Mesolithic people in Britain would not have experienced one before and wouldn't have recognised signs such as the withdrawal of the sea. In fact, such an exposure of the sea floor may have caused them to go further out and collect marine resources, putting them in danger. In the long term, the tsunami's effects may have been felt through a reduction in food resources caused by the tsunami destroying hazelnut trees and vegetation. Saline intrusion would also have affected coastal croplands, further reducing food resources. Since the tsunami occurred in late autumn, this was a particularly vulnerable time for Mesolithic people who needed to collect and store food for the winter. The authors suggest that other Mesolithic sites in northern Britain would also have experienced a reduction in population due to the direct and indirect effects of the tsunami. Overall, according to the researchers, evidence shows that there's a likelihood that the Storegga tsunami contributed to population decline in Britain during the Mesolithic. However, the modelling isn't perfect. Further research at additional Mesolithic sites may provide more evidence to support this idea. That's it. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Thank you to my patrons and channel members. If you want to join my Patreon community or support me as a YouTube channel member, the details are in the description below. I'll see you next time.